Thank you so much, everyone. Big shout out to Flow Carbon, Cello, Near Foundation, and OFP for this fantastic event. So thank you all so much for being here. We got the double power of Luke's here. We'll get into that just a second. So we'll start out with a round of introductions. But before that, the goal of this panel is to kind of talk a little bit about the importance of digital MRV. I know y'all are all looking for, oh look, it's written up there, digital MRV, and how that leads to the value creation in a lot of the other panels that we've talked about here. So we'll start out with a brief round of introductions. Love for you guys to share with us your organization as well as kind of your relevance of your organization within the context of this panel. So I'll pass it off to Luke.
Awesome. Thank you, Luke. I'm Luke Weber. I was born and raised in the Caribbean, and that's where we started Colectivo. We're building a toolkit for local communities to create their own regenerative economy. And one of the key pieces there is allowing them to realize the value of natural assets that they're currently already stewarding, but not being rewarded for, to bootstrap their own economy and develop their region.
Hi, I'm Robbie Heilberg. I'm the head of growth at DClimate, and we build a data infrastructure to power a decentralized climate information ecosystem. So what this means essentially is that we make it easy for people to get and share data via an open marketplace, and then build decentralized and open climate applications that make businesses and communities better and more resilient around climate risks. So I'm looking forward to the conversation, and thank you so much, Luke, for moderating, and thank you for Flow Carbon, Cello, and everyone else for putting together this event.
And I'm Arlene, Chief Climate Officer at Open Forest Protocol. And basically, Open Forest Protocol is providing digital MRV tools to any forest projects, any size, all around the world. And we're laying out the foundation for a more inclusive, scalable, data-backed financial mechanism for nature-based solutions that we truly need to mitigate climate change today.
Awesome. Okay, crowd participation moment. Who knows what the M in MRV stands for? Raise your hand, raise your hand. All right, I see, yep, right here, right up front. What is it? Measurement, correct. Who's got the R? Raise your hand if you got the R. I see you right there in the back. Reporting, thank you. And the V, who knows what that stands for? Shout it out. Woo, verification, exactly. I might say validation at some point. Let's make sure that we know the distinction. There is a distinction, we don't need to get into it. Anyways, MRV is fantastic. Measurement, reporting, and verification. Got a little history lesson for you. It's a tri-step process as defined by the WRI, World Resource Institute, to prove impact and track changes over time as they relate to emissions, ecological, health, and sustainable development goals. So this was kind of a tri-step process that was developed in COP9 around 2007 or so, where they added on the verification element to this. So this is a relatively new process, but it's evolved along with the voluntary carbon markets as they've also come out. So I think this was formally ratified in the Paris Climate Agreements in around Article 9. You can fact check me on that if that's not true. So it consists of 3 steps, right? The direct measurement of data, the reporting of compilation of that data into an inventory, and then the verification to ensure accuracy and legitimacy of that. So one of the really interesting things, and the reason that we're kind of having this panel, is that digital MRV lends itself to solving certain problems in the existing way that forest projects, carbon projects, direct air capture, anything like that are recording data and then creating an asset off of that. So I'd love to ask some of our panelists some of the bottlenecks that we are aware of in the existing or legacy MRV systems that DMRV may or may not be addressing. But some of those bottlenecks, just to kind of give some context as to what this is doing that's new. Robbie, I'd love to pass it off to you.
Thank you for volunteering me, Luke. No, happy to kick that off. And so there are a few bottlenecks with traditional MRV that digitizing this process is well suited for. So one of the primary ones is cost. So it depends on the size, on the location of the project, but cost can be prohibitive, especially for some smaller nature-based solutions, especially who are looking to generate eco-credits that might fit or fall outside of the traditional Verra or gold standard framework. And so this can be anywhere from a couple $100,000 to millions of dollars, depending on the size of the project. And so digitizing this process and bringing into place remote sensing techniques as well as machine learning and AI approaches for doing reporting can drastically reduce costs and open up participation for smaller nature-based projects, as well as larger projects who are looking to be able to accurately report and measure their projects. The other one is accuracy. So a lot of traditional MRV relies on human and manual approaches to actually measuring how much carbon is sequestered, what the above-ground biomass is in a forest, and with any process that involves humans, this can be prone to inaccuracies. And so digitizing the process, bringing into place new technology, specifically satellite technology and geospatial intelligence, which has only drastically improved over the past couple of decades, can not only increase the accuracy of our approach to MRV, but can also improve the accountability of how we report these projects, because you're able to check the underlying data used for these methodologies, and you're able to see the approach that was taken to verify and validate these projects.
Absolutely, yeah. Cost, transparency, accuracy, and I also heard you say scalability too, which is a critical part of that. I'd love to hear, Luke, your experience in Collectivo and kind of what some of the bottlenecks within the current MRV system have played out for you.
Yeah, definitely. So Collectivo started in the Caribbean region, which by landmass is relatively or extremely small. And in the current system, I think from about 40 acres, a project starts making potential sense. But even there, it's extremely small. We often deal with programs or groups that are dealing with much smaller land masses, and therefore the traditional MRV solutions will never make sense. And the biggest challenge there is that there's no alternative currently. So either you participate, or if you're unable to participate, you're just missing out. And especially regions that are more prone to the effects of climate change and are also under-resourced already now, those are being kind of punished even more by not having this large land mass and not having kind of the coordination capacity to finance and execute the stewardship. And then what you end up happening is that these communities will continue to steward these natural assets or natural resources because their livelihood depends on it, but they're not getting a single dollar of this global market in return. So the scalability is extremely critical. To also go to, I think, another factor, which is the inclusivity. Right now, the MRV market and the carbon credit market is a relatively centralized power structure that goes through like different larger institutions that kind of set the structure, and anybody who doesn't fit within that network is kind of pushed out. And yeah, I think the MRV really opens up new ways for us to do more kind of bottoms-up measurement and bottoms-up MRV that I think is really going to flip the picture around.
So, Orlean, I'd love to hear if you have any insights as to kind of, we're talking about MRV, and I think inclusivity is a huge, huge thing, Luke. The question, though, is inclusivity of whom? And so I'd love to hear kind of, from your perspective, Orlean, and from everybody, sort of on the ground, what are some of the impacts of DMRV and of MRV, and that make this issue very, very important and consequential for people?
Yeah, sure. So I think just to jump on what you were saying before, to give you an insight of what MRV looks like and how we can improve it and how DMRV could have a huge impact. Like currently, what is most of the time done by carbon project developers, that they hire a consultant, they fly them to the site that they need to take measurements from. They take the measurements, they do the data processing back at the office, they do the carbon calculations on Excel sheets, error-prone, like you were saying, and so on. So it's a very expensive process because you have to hire consultants and so on, a few $100,000, as you were saying. And digital MRV is a really good way of including local communities and like the people that are really on the ground to start do the measurements instead of flying consultants from all over the world to just do the data collection. So I think that with digital MRV, if we provide easy to use tools like to measure trees, for example, or to take measurements, and then you combine them with remote sensing, with IoT, or with any additional tools with data layers that we can have, we're able to reduce the cost, reduce the time that it takes to do the measurements and so on, and to really empower the local communities, to really empower people on the ground to take care of the forest. Like, they're hired basically to grow the forest, monitor them on the long term, make sure the forest is on the ground, instead of just like selling the land to timber companies because that's how they get revenue right now. So yeah, I think digital MRV can be really inclusive, and can really include local communities in this, like, these climate solutions that are necessary for us.
And maybe for me to add on that, I think inclusive also means effective, because we want to push the resources as much as we can to those that are doing the action, and not the overhead of controlling if they're actually doing the action. I think right now, sometimes up to 90% of a budget of a ecological credit project is allocated to non-core actions and not the actual restoration or regeneration itself. And I think that's a part of this whole refi space, is really pushing the financial means to regenerate, opposed to all the bureaucracy kind of that we see in the traditional MRV market.
So we just heard refi for the first word. Thank you, Luke, for the first time. So I think now would be a great time to shift towards thinking about DMRV within the context of Web3 and within refi. But first, I want to make this a little bit more concrete. I would love for each of you to go through and tell me an example of DMRV that, like, that you would deal with or that you would want to see. Just it could be something simple, like a picture or whatever. But yeah, I'd love to start with you, Arlene. What's an example of DMRV that just so we can kind of make it a little bit more clear?
Yeah, okay, so simple example for us, because that's really what we do at Open Forest Protocol. So what we did is, like, build a mobile app for people on the ground to go and take tree measurements. So it's a super simple mobile app where they record the tree circumference, trunk circumference, the height of the tree. They take pictures of the trees also that they're growing. And all this data is stored on-chain, transparent, and then will be really soon visible to everybody here, because we're releasing an Explorer where you'll see all the projects that are happening on the ground, all the data that they're collecting, all the photos, and so on. So that's a simple tool that we've built for them, really well accepted for the moment. And yeah, we'll be like adding functionalities, adding also remote sensing, of course, but yeah, that's an example.
Yeah, so an example is we've built an open platform called Cyclops that essentially uses a remote sensing-based approach using publicly available satellite data and combined with machine learning AI algorithms to be able to create both a historical time series of data as well as a predictive model for future carbon variables, as well as year-over-year biomass and deforestation. And this is really important for project developers to be able to both do internal risk management as well as to be able to generate credits. And so what this would look like is they would use this user platform in order to draw custom polygons where their projects are located, to be able to pull all of this data, and then they can generate a report based off of where their projects are located. And then that data can either be stored in a simple CSV file, or it can be stored on chain and used to generate credits. But this is really good if you have multiple projects in different areas of the world and don't have the ability to do lengthy, expensive, and time-consuming verification processes that most, as you said, smaller projects simply don't have access to, both from a cost perspective as well as a time perspective.
Awesome. So one technology piece we're building out is called the Geo-NFT, which is essentially an NFT that embodies a geographic location. And what you can do with this is that you can link data flows from that specific location to match specific types of methodologies. So what we're envisioning is that in different countries, the local stewards may not be able to do exactly the same process of MRV. Either because they don't have a same, let's say, data culture, or because satellite data doesn't work there, or, for example, there's a project in Colombia called ETHDenver, and in the areas where they work, it's very steep, and satellite data is really hard to work with. But what we're building out is technology that really sets the fundament for uploading data about the impact that's happening on the ground, And then from that, you kind of open up a whole innovation space because you can do images, you can have satellite data, you can do underground sensing, you can do, basically, you can imagine what it is. And I think from that foundation now is where we hope to iterate quite fast and figure out which types of MRV are the best for which types of assets and also for which types of communities.
That's amazing. Yeah, I hope for everybody listening that made things a little bit more clear. Some of that, every time I hear about Cyclops, I'm just like, oh my gosh, it's so cool. And likewise with Collectivo. I mean, it's just a complete, yeah, there's a lot of stuff out there. Well, so let's shift back to Web3 and think a little bit as to how DMRV kind of helps aid in or support Web3. And also as we think also a Web3-based carbon market, which is something that a lot of us here are building towards. So anybody's welcome to take that.
Yeah, I can jump in if you want. Yeah, so I think we now have the technology with Web3, with digital MRV to have a fully on-chain system. So from project creation, from data collection, processing, verification, the issuance of carbon credits, the trading, and also the retirement. And so we have the full stack of tools, and we just need to build like every part of it. And it's available. So, and it's a system that will be able to scale the projects that we have. It will be less expensive. We'll be able to onboard way more projects. We'll be able to develop new projects, remove intermediaries, like the funds that are normally, like that fund carbon projects. They'll be like way more impactful if we remove intermediaries. And this is what blockchain enables us to do. Like we have transparency, more funds to project, they're able to develop new projects, and we'll scale like nature-based carbon projects, basically. So I think, yeah, we have everything that we need right now to have a fully on-chain digital MRV carbon credits financing mechanism.
No, 100%. I mean, we've had, a million different panels about how we scale the voluntary carbon market, but as you correctly pointed out, the tools are here. It's just a question of how we get to mainstream adoption, not only within the incumbent voluntary carbon market, but with a lot of the projects who are here today. And so this is about enabling us to get from, 3 to 5 year wait times to verify projects and bring credits to market to 3 to 5 days. And those tools aren't 3 to 5 years away. They're here and they're available today. And so I think that we're going to see Web3 native credits come to market this year. And I think that you're going to see a lot of high quality projects be able to access the demand side of the equation because of digital MRV, where instead of needing to rely on that expensive and extremely lengthy process for sending people physically to assess and validate projects, you have digital tools that are inexpensive in many cases to use and that enable you to validate and verify projects natively on chain or sometimes in some cases off chain, and then bring those credits natively onto blockchains to be made available to the demand side. And what is uniquely really exciting about those credits is that you have a ton of data available to the consumer. You have metadata available about the verification process, the data that was used as part of that methodology, all of the project details that aren't currently available to consumers today. And a lot of corporates are really starting to consider their internal risk management framework for how they think about carbon financing and carbon credits because they can't take the word of a registry that a forest is still there, especially if the registry is only checking every couple of years. With digital MRV, we can do either real-time or quarterly monitoring to make sure that the forest is still there, that the carbon that we say is being sequestered or that the biomass that's part of that credit is still part of that vintage, so that corporates and the demand side can have trust in the underlying ecological asset, and so that we can have an accountable and scalable voluntary carbon market. Those tools are here today, and I think that we'll see a lot of progress be made on that front this year.
So it kind of sounds like what you're saying, Robbie, is that like you have to have this tool set in order to provide value to the VCM.
I mean, if you want it to be accountable and truly data-driven, absolutely, because I think that this is not something that just retail consumers are going to demand. Consumers who are going to need these tools to go to the SEC, to go to the European Central Bank and other central regulators to say, this is what I've used to offset scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions, they're not going to be able to put themselves at risk of being fined or facing sanctions because the offsets that they're using for doing that are no longer removing or sequestering the carbon that they say they are. They need a accountable risk management framework, and they need credits that they can actually trace from their birth all the way through their lifetime. And that's what Web3 native credits powered by digital MRV does.
Yeah, amazing. I think by having these tools around, again, we mentioned the accountability, the transparency, it really develops the ecological credit markets both horizontally but also vertically. We're going to be able to compare different types of credits way better, and we're going to be able to value them also properly. While at the same time, it's also going to create an infrastructure on which we can start going beyond carbon. I think it's kind of the elephant in the room, but everybody knows that just carbon is not going to save the planet, especially having worked a lot in developing countries. Heck, they don't care about carbon. People are dying of hunger. People are dying of tsunamis. There's a lot more that they're being faced with. But I think really by creating the real baseline of this industry, by providing the tools that are necessary to create better data from real-world projects, I think it's really going to both make the market deeper and better, but also going to open up new markets that just don't make sense right now. And maybe kind of building on top of that, the whole concept of Web3, of a kind of blockchain layer to coordinate with, I think there's another, maybe even bigger change that's happening, and that's the fact that we're all sitting here together. In a traditional world, we would all be competitors, and we'd be fighting for market share, and we'd be hiding secrets and signing NDAs and crap like that. But because we're building on this open infrastructure, and we understand that we strengthen each other, instead of asking him like, oh, what do you guys do? I'm hey, how can we integrate D-Climate? And with Collectivo already now, we're working with Region Network, we're starting to work with Open Forest Protocol, we're at ReFi now, kind of building on Cello. It's just all so synergistic, because in the end, it's all just coordination. And if we're able to out-coordinate the legacy systems and show that we're better, more efficient at measuring and creating impact, I think, yeah, we're all going to succeed.
I love it. Yeah, I was talking with Sam Bennett from Regen, and we were like, okay, so how do you onboard projects? So what's the method? So it's awesome. I mean, it's such a good observation, Luke, about the collaboration. So, Orleen, kind of building off of that, you were talking a little bit about kind of contrasting digital MRV versus the existing system. Going off of Luke's point, what kind of barriers are you seeing, and big kind of barriers to implementation of these types of tools that we're seeing right now? Is it time? Is it the technology? What are you kind of seeing in terms of that?
Yeah, I think as we introduce new digital tools, it's all about education and making these tools easy to use, easy to understand. And so we've seen it with Open Forest Protocol. I mean, we've put the mobile app that we've developed to collect the ground data in the hands of local communities. People that you don't expect to have a lot of knowledge about technology, blockchain, and so on. But it was really not a blocker. So if tools are well designed, and when you provide an additional revenue source to people that are normally using the land to do timber, for example, they're really willing to switch because they're the first ones to be impacted by climate change. We have a lot of projects in Africa, in South America, and these are the people at the foreground of climate change, the impact, the drought, and so on. And so for the moment, their core revenue is, sometimes it's just timber, or they just send their land to mining companies because this is the only way they can get a revenue. And so you do have barriers, language barriers, you do have technology barriers, but when you provide something that's easy to use, it's really easily overcome, especially if you provide a new way of protecting their land, of creating new ecosystems, reforesting. They know the benefits of forest, they know the benefits of doing agroforestry and so on. They were just waiting for a way of having access to this finance. And I think with digital MRV and with the new tools that we're able to develop, we'll be able to onboard way more nature-based projects that are smaller than the ones that have access to carbon financing right now. Right now, normally you should have like 10 of thousands of hectares to be at least like 5,000 hectares to like have access to carbon financing. But if we're able to scale to onboard like local communities, smaller farmers, and so on, we'll be able to scale the markets, provide more supply, provide quality credits, provide like help people on the ground. And so, yeah, there's definitely bottlenecks, but when you provide, like when you improve the livelihoods of people, they're willing to put in the additional work to overcome the small bottlenecks.
Yeah, no, I think a lot of it comes down to access and user experience. If you can make these tools accessible to local communities and affected stakeholders and easy to use, so that you don't need to be a professional data engineer in order to understand these analytics and these insights about different projects, then you'll start to see adoption from the ground all the way up to the top. And that's I think really important, not just in how we think about building different platforms, but how the broader space is thinking about building different platforms, is access inclusivity by means of really good user experience. And then the second component is thinking about the demand side, and a lot of that right now for 2030, 2040, 2050 net zero goals is coming from larger corporates. And if you tell them that you can build something better, faster, more accurate than the traditional market, you would think they would say, sign me up immediately. But at the same time, they also want to make sure that they can trust the counterparts that they're working with, that the underlying data is reliable, that they've been certified by a third party that at the very least works with one of the major established registries. And so as much as we, might all want to be kind of in this, little space by ourselves, we also do need to make overtures, to the existing market and see how we can not only be collaborative with each other, but with the existing carbon market, offer our tools and say, how can we help? And I think, those who are, truly looking to embrace and use innovation to refine and improve their own processes will be receptive to that.
I think the biggest barrier I see is that we're doing so many new things at the same time that the kind of combination of all of that is just really hard to kind of convince people that this is relevant and that they should pay attention, because not everybody knows about carbon credits or ecological credits on itself. Not everybody knows about blockchain. Even fewer people believe that blockchain is positive. I was giving a presentation in the Netherlands for an impact community. These were like the 500 most innovative young people in the Netherlands, and I asked them who thinks blockchain does more harm than good, and like 95% raised their hand and like, yeah, blockchain is bad for nature, you're destroying it. And kind of if you combine, like there's such a small need, just refine these. Like I'm super excited to see all these people here because there's not enough of us yet, and we need to find better ways to kind of articulate that this combination of things that people may not be familiar yet, but the ingredients together make something super impactful that everybody can benefit from. But that's something that we have really struggled with. And one thing we did is we created an impact report about everything we did in the Caribbean, just as a way to showcase visually as well and in person to a government agency or a lawmaker that, hey, this is relevant, you should pay attention. Because I think once people realize the potential of it, their eyes go wide open. When I tell people, oh, did you know that natural capital assets are worth X trillion? Like, no, and they want to know more. But I think it's that educational exercise that's one of the biggest barriers right now.
That's awesome. Well, so in closing, I would love to ask each of you really quickly, this is Robbie's idea, full credit, call to action. What would you guys suggest is kind of what can we take away from this? What can we do? And maybe anybody who's engaged here would be able to take away from this. So I'll start with you, Luke.
We're always looking for communities that are stewarding natural assets locally and that are looking to bootstrap their, or at least inject more money or more capital locally. So if you are working with a community, let me know. Additionally, I would say I have a DeFi background and I see a lot of the refi community coming in now doesn't have that kind of blockchain native experience. So I think my call to action is, hey, go on-chain, go into a wallet, go on Celo, whatever network you want to go, and play around with the different apps. And it's going to open your mind to all the potential that we have with this new kind of asset class coming on the blockchain.
Awesome.
Yep.
Robbie?
If you're developing a carbon financing project or a conservation project, we would love to help with MRV. Please reach out. If you need data or you collect data, please reach out. We have almost 40 terabytes of data from around the world that's completely free. And so we'd love to see how we can work with you to either ingest that data into what you're building or to help you build an application on our layer. So if we can help with any of that, please reach out. Would love to be of service. And yeah, thank you for moderating this session. It was a pleasure to be here.
Woo! Orleen?
Yeah, I think on my side it will just be an invitation to collaborate. We're always stronger together, we'll go faster. This is also the advantage of refi, of blockchain, of crypto. Like, we do collaborate, and this event is typically an example of great collaboration. We're all building things that interact with each other. We're already like working with the climate and so on. So yeah, just like if you're building something, if we're able to go faster together, then we should just work together. So don't hesitate to reach out.
Thank you so much, Orleen, Robbie, and Luke. Let's give them all a round of applause.
Thank you.